Please be seated. Thank you. Right. We've got as far as agenda item 6, report of Head of Democratic Services. Lloyd, over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. What I was about to say, item 6(2), which is the programme meetings, I just draw members' attention to a slightly revised version of the programme meetings, which is on the back page, which we're asking you to agree. The only change from the one published in the agenda is the cycles of July, September, and September, November, and January of Council and Cabinet. The dates have been adjusted so they more closely reflect the dates of this year's programme meetings.
Thank you. Councillor Edwards, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. The head of the Democratic Services report is in 3 parts. The first part is the usual devising of council of the urgent decisions taken since we last met, of which there were 3. The first relates to the financial improvement programme, to move that forward speedily without delay. The second was to ensure continuity of insurance, corporate insurance, which is obviously necessary. And the third was to purchase housing, where speed is of an essence for us all. So those are relatively straightforward matters, and Council is asked to note. The second item is, as the head of Democratic has said, the programme of meeting, and Council is asked to agree those meetings. And the third is to introduce the Audit Committee annual report. It is best practice for the Audit Committee to report to Council on an annual basis, outlining the activities that they have undertaken in the past year. That report provides that information. I therefore move that 1 and 3 are noted and 2 approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Bianco?
And I second.
And are there any other speakers? No other speakers? Okay. Is that agreed then? Thank you. So straight on to item 7, statement of licensing policy. I call Councillor Bridges, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This item asks Council to adopt the revised statement of licensing policy for 2026 to 2031, as required every 5 years under the Licensing Act 2003. The review was carried out in 2025, and a full statutory consultation ran from the 22nd of September to the 3rd of November, involving responsible authorities, businesses, ward members, the Licensing Committee and the Resident Services Select Committee. Their feedback has shaped the final version before us this evening. Although legislative changes since 2021 have been limited, this updated policy makes several important improvements. These include new sections on environmental best practice, the agent of change principle, counter-terrorism, spiking prevention, the National Ask for Andrea safeguarding scheme, and updated guidance on pavement licensing. It also clarifies expectations around planning, representations, remote sales, and protecting children from harm. Mr. Mayor, this policy strengthens our ability to promote the licensing objectives, support responsible operators, and protect residents. So I commend it to Council.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Edwards, please.
Yes, I second and reserve my rights. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Any further debate? No? Is that agreed? Thank you. So on to agenda item 8, local development scheme, and I'm calling Councillor Tuckwell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm speaking this evening to introduce the revised local development scheme, which Cabinet have recommended for adoption by full council. The local development scheme, or LDS, is the plan that sets out our timetable for producing Hillingdon's local plan and other planning policy documents. The local plan is the foundation for how our borough will grow and develop over the next 15 years. It guides where homes are built, where businesses can expand, and how our green spaces are protected and how infrastructure is planned. The current LDS was adopted by full council in February 2025. Since then, officers have made significant progress on preparing the local plan, including gathering evidence, consulting early with residents and stakeholders. I would like to place on record and thank the planning policy team for their dedication and professionalism in supporting Cabinet members with clear advice and evidence. However, circumstances beyond the Council's control, such as updated housing targets, national planning reforms, and potential impacts from a proposed Heathrow changes, mean the current timetable is no longer realistic. A revised programme is needed to ensure the plan is robust, sound, and properly reflects updated housing requirements, changes in national planning policy, and other emerging issues affecting the borough. The revised LDS provides a realistic timetable for delivering a local plan that meets these challenges whilst protecting the Greenbelt, prioritising previously developed land and ensuring that growth is managed responsibly. It also ensures that residents, stakeholders are properly informed and consulted as the plan progresses. There are no additional costs arising from this decision, and the work will continue to be funded from existing budgets and grant funding. Mr Mayor, adopting this revised local development scheme is a responsible step. It ensures that Hillingdon has a clear, credible roadmap for delivering a high-quality local plan that serves the long-term interests of Hillingdon residents. I therefore move the recommendations to full council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tuckwell, and to be seconded by Councillor Edwards again.
That is correct, Mr Mayor. I reserve my rights as well, please.
Any other speakers? No? Is that agreed then? Agreed. Thank you. So straight on to agenda item 9, council tax base and business rates forecast 26-27, and I'm calling Councillor Lavery, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is mainly a standard item that comes to council at this time of year to approve the council tax base for 26-27, and it's asking for approval for 107,546 as our Band D equivalent properties, and the calculation is as usual in the papers. It also asks for authority for the Corporate Director of Finance to submit the return in respect of our business rates forecast by the 31st of January. And there is also one other matter within this report. Having reviewed the working age council tax reduction scheme, there are a number of changes to that are recommended and were indeed foreshadowed last year. I therefore move the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery, and seconded by Councillor Edwards.
That is correct, Mr Mayor, and again I reserve my rights. Thank you.
Okay, any further debate? Any other speakers? No? Is that agreed then? Thank you. Rapidly on into members' questions. And we start, I think, with question 10.6 submitted by Councillor Martin. If you would, please. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Can the Cabinet Member please update Council on the recent article in the Evening Standard that Hillingdon Council are focusing on prioritising Hillingdon residents for housing ahead of prioritising asylum seekers, which is a choice being made by other London boroughs?
Councillor Tuckwell.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Martin, for your question. As reported in the Evening Standard, Hillingdon Council will not take part in any housing scheme that prioritises asylum seekers over long-standing Hillingdon residents. Our borough already faces significant pressure on housing, from rising private rents to a chronic shortage of affordable homes, and we are clear that our residents must come first. We have a pipeline of developments under construction, and we are rapidly acquiring new properties to increase our affordable housing stock. But the reality is that demand still far outstrips supply, and many eligible residents face long waits for suitable council homes. Diverting homes away from local need would simply worsen that pressure and increase costs to taxpayers. Providing support to asylum seekers is rightly a national responsibility. Hillingdon continues to press government to meet those obligations properly, but we will not ask our residents to shoulder unfair burdens without full funding or regard to local circumstances. At the same time, Hillingdon remains a tolerant and diverse borough. We will continue to support those in need, whilst ensuring the best interests of our residents are always protected. Mr Mayor, the message is crystal clear. Hillingdon residents come first, and that is the choice that this Conservative administration is making today and every day. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tuckwell. Councillor Martin, do you have a supplementary?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. So, on to the next question then by Councillor Bowles, please. If you would, Councillor Bowles.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Could the Cabinet Member for Corporate Services and Property inform this Council of the total amount of unpaid debt on commercial leases of Council-owned assets, and explain what robust measures are in place to ensure that these debts are not only pursued but actually collected, so that public assets are not left generating losses due to an ineffective debt recovery?
Thank you. Councillor Bianco, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Bowles. As I'm sure you all know, most commercial leases invoice rent on a quarterly basis. This is quarterly in advance, I should say, which results in peaks and troughs in terms of the timing of the receipt of rent and the recording of the debt ledger, and hence the higher recorded debt around the established quarter days in March, June, September and December. That being said, the trend on rent arrears on our commercial portfolio over the course of this financial year to date shows a reduction in debt carried. As at the end of December 2025, which is the most recent figures we have available, total arrears were recorded at 1.3 million. The trend indicates a reduction in debt rent arrears by 27% from the peak in September to the end of December, and the reduction of 17% overall over the period of the financial year. What matters most, however, is focus. The facts here are clear. Nearly 98% of the debt sits with just 49 cases. That is why officer effort has been targeted where it actually delivers results. And I'm pleased to say those results are real. 220,000 has been recovered from Stockley Park Golf Club. 220,000 of historic NHS rents have been recovered, and 39,000 from Uxbridge Market traders, all within the last few months. This council has put in place a joined-up system between property, finance and legal. We are carrying out credit checks, securing deposits, engaging early with struggling tenants. All our tenants are treated equally and with respect, but that doesn't mean that we won't and don't take legal action against those who owe but don't pay. Historically, historic unrecoverable sums are being transparently provisioned and written off, not quietly ignored. So in summary, debts are being chased, money is being recovered, and the arrears are going down, not up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bianco. Councillor Bowles, have your supplementary.
Yes, I do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for your answer. The Labour Group have been advised that an article is about to be published by My London stating that the Council and Cabinet member made a decision not to recover debt arrears on a lease as the costs would be disproportionate to the debt the Council may be able to recover and instead sell the asset. Can the Cabinet member confirm whether a disproportionate cost test has been formally applied in every case of lease breach and rent arrears over the last 5 years? And if not, what makes this case, involving a former Conservative councillor, so uniquely deserving of leniency that the Council's solution is to sell a public asset rather than enforce a lease and protect taxpayers?
Councillor Bianco.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There is more to this than meets the eye, and I think it's probably best to start by saying it's not this asset to which he refers sits in public open space, and as such, any decision to sell, contemplating any decision to sell or market the property requires a public open space consultation, and this is something we have set in motion. We have also considered the marketing of the property, and at present, preliminary marketing advice has been obtained, and draft particulars are in the course of preparation. But as yet, no firm decision has been made on marketing the property, and in particular, we're keen to await the outcome of the public order, or the public space notification and consultation. However, as members in this chamber will be aware, it is a serious breach of the Code of Conduct for officers or members to disclose confidential information, often known here as Part 2, to members of the public or the press. Unfortunately, the Cowley Meeting Hall subject has been the subject of numerous press inquiries this past week, with one journalist stating categorically that he had access to the Part 2 information. This is clearly a serious breach and undermines trust. I understand that the Chief Executive and Monitoring Officer will be investigating how this information found its way to the local press and will take action where appropriate.
Thank you. On to question 10.1. A question from Councillor Curling, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. In Hayes Town Ward, we have a number of large developments of mixed tenure, like the High Point Village and the old vinyl factory, amongst others, where high and ever-increasing service charges can be crippling for leaseholders. Does the Cabinet Member agree with me that the Labour government's delay in implementing the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act 2024 is causing considerable pain for residents in Hillingdon who have to suffer excessive service charges by their landlords, especially in the ongoing cost of living crisis?
Thank you. Councillor Tuckwell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Curlin, for your question and for your ongoing support for residents at High Point Village and other developments in Hayes Town. I recognise the pressures that leaseholders face with rising service charges. These can place real financial strain on households, particularly during the cost of living crisis. You are right to highlight the Leasehold and Freehold Reform Act 2024. Whilst this legislation is intended to provide stronger protections for leaseholders, the truth is that delays in this implementation by the national government has left residents facing significant uncertainty. Here in Hillingdon, the Conservative administration continues to be aware of these issues. Our focus is on ensuring that when national reforms are implemented, residents are able to access any relief available. Mr. Mayor, again I would like to acknowledge the work of Councillor Curling and his colleagues in the Hayes Independent Group who have supported residents on service charges and cladding issues over the years. Their advocacy makes a real difference on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you. Have you a supplementary, Councillor Curling?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Would the Cabinet Member like to comment on the steps our MPs are taking in Parliament to press the government to deliver the promised leasehold reforms?
Councillor Tuckwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Curling, for your follow-up. To answer your question, I am aware that David Simmons, the Member of Parliament for Russett, Northwood and Pinner, has spoken specifically at the dispatch box on this very piece of legislation, and he has called for the government to speed up the implementation. Likewise, we know that John McDonnell, the MP for Hayes and Harlington, is a long-standing MP who has regular engagement with his residents, and it's good to see that there is cross-party recognition that this piece of legislation needs to come in very quickly. Do recognise that implementation is something for national government, but it is positive to see at least 2 of the 3 MPs in Hillingdon are working together to ensure that our residents are looked after and that this legislation is implemented as soon as possible.
Thank you. On to question 10.4. Question from Councillor Davis, please. Councillor Davis.
Could the Cabinet Member please set out any measures being introduced to assist residents with the disposal of large household items that do not fall within the scope of the standard waste collection service?
Thank you. Councillor Bridges, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Davis, for your question. I'm pleased to confirm that the Conservative administration are launching new community pop-up waste drop events to support residents in disposing of larger items that cannot be collected through the normal curbside service. These events will run on a fortnightly basis, with the first taking place at the end of this month. The pop-up waste drop events will be held on Saturdays at convenient local locations across the borough, giving residents the opportunity to bring bulky items and other materials that are not accepted at curbside. Items that can be brought include electronics, general household waste, metal items and garden items. Events will rotate across a range of wards to ensure accessibility for as many residents as possible, and I am pleased to confirm this evening that the first event will take place on the 31st of January in Charville Ward, running from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. Further details about this event, as well as information about future pop-up waste drop dates and locations, will be available on our website. Information will also be shared on social media and in neighbourhoods where the events are being held. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bridges. Do you have a supplementary, Councillor Davis?
No, Mr. Mayor.
You don't? Okay. So straight on to question 10.3 then, submitted by Councillor Mathers, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question to Leader of the Council. The Council's Chief Finance Officer confirmed at Corporate Infrastructure and Finance Select Committee on the 6th of January 2026 that exceptional financial support will cost residents around 10 million every year. Why has the Leader of the Council failed to make this clear in the budget consultation, and does he accept that residents have been denied full and honest disclosure about the true cost and long-term consequences of this exceptional financial support bid?
Thank you, Councillor Mathers. Councillor Edwards, please.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor, and thank you very much, Councillor Mathers, for your question. In short, no, I don't think and don't accept that residents have been denied full information and honest disclosure. Our Chief Financial Officer is highly capable and valued, but unfortunately he's not clairvoyant, as much as we would wish he were. The eventual repayment cost of exceptional financial support depends on a number of variables, none of which are yet known. Consequently, no one can state now, today, with any degree of certainty, what the repayment costs for exceptional financial support will be. We can be clear, though, that the Council requires that support because of its sustained underfunding by successive governments. At the Select Committee referred to by Councillor Mathers, the Chief Financial Officer made this point explicitly. Benchmarking data presented to the committee showed that Hillingdon is the 4th lowest spending authority in London. He also explained that the new fair funding review has not fully stabilised local government finances, and that it is expected that up to half of London's councils will require exceptional financial support by 2029. The new fair funding formula reflects the assessment of financial need of local authorities to deliver statutory services, and it is based on data largely from 2023 to 24, and in some cases as early as 2021. In effect, it represents the cost to Hillingdon of delivering statutory services in the year before last moving forwards. Yet the government doesn't intend to fully fund those costs until 2028-2029. By phasing in the formula over the next 3 years, government will withhold £65 million from Hillingdon over that period, equivalent to £590 per household. As we must provide those statutory services, we have no option but to obtain that £65 million by way of exceptional financial support. A further £20 million of support is requested to cover the deficit that we've built up, supporting asylum seekers placed in our borough by the Home Office and supporting new arrivals at Heathrow Airport who require and are entitled to local authority support. Without government funding, ultimately, it is Hillingdon's residents that are required to bear the cost of what is clearly a national responsibility. Rather than celebrating a welcome but wholly insufficient increase in government funding, as our Labour colleagues appear to be doing, we are standing up for our residents. We are challenging government both on the funding of immigration-related responsibilities and on the continued underfunding that will persist for at least another 2 years. I'm pleased to say that only yesterday I was informed that government had agreed to a one-off payment of £500,000 to help meet the historic cost of supporting Chagosian arrivals. That doesn't cover the full amount we are seeking, but like the fair funding formula, it is a step in the right direction. We have been transparent with members and with residents about the need for exceptional financial support. The consultation budget report includes a section titled The Remaining Gap and EFS, and the potential, and I emphasise the words potential, repayments costs are set out in paragraphs 7.6. The actual cost of exceptional financial support will only become clear once we know how much borrowing is required and when that borrowing takes place. We have made our case to government. It is now for government to determine how much exceptional financial support they believe we need and on what terms it will be provided. It appears that our request relating to 2024-25 may not be agreed and might instead be rolled into the support for this year. We had requested £40 million for that year, for 2024-25, to restore our reserves, but it is possible that government will conclude that a lower amount is sufficient. After all, we entered this financial year with £20 million in reserve, which our former Section 151 officer judged to be adequate, and that may inform the government's view. Our requests for this year, 25-26 and next, are based on worst case scenarios. We have asked for £50 million for this year, but we may only require 40, depending on how the year concludes. If that proves to be the case, we would also require less funding next year. We are arguing that £20 million of the exceptional financial support should be funded by way of grant to reflect the exceptional level of asylum seekers placed in our borough and the unfunded duties as a port authority. We are also pressing for the full implementation of the new funding formula from next year, or for measures to mitigate the £65 million loss, which is exceptionally high compared with the losses of other authorities consequent to the change to this new formula. While I hold little hope of full early implementation, it is possible that the terms attached to the exceptional financial support relating to this £65 million may be more favourable than usual. Even once government confirms the level of borrowing we can incur, costs will only arise on the amounts we actually borrow and at the point we borrow them. We are also able to use capital receipts from asset sales to reduce the borrowing. The decisions on this will be taken much closer to the time. For all these reasons, it is simply not possible at this stage to state what the revenue cost of exceptional financial support will be for the council and its residents. However, I accept the prudence of the Chief Financial Officer making provision for the worst case. What we do know is that the costs would be significantly lower were Hillingdon to be funded properly and in full from next year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Mays, do you have a supplementary, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. The Cabinet Member for Finance and Transformation continuously describes exceptional financial support as a simple counting adjustment, as did his predecessor. It's clear the Council will not be able to balance its budget, as we have heard. Can the Leader explain why the administration has been downplaying the reality of the debt of EFS?
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you again for your supplementary question, Councillor Mathers. I don't accept the fact that we have been downplaying it at all. I can expressly recollect Councillor Goddard being very open with this chamber back in September, I believe, around EFS, the need for the EFS, the way it can be granted, the way it can be funded, and including the council tax. It is already the question from a resident has already been answered with regard to that statement. I believe we have been wholly transparent. It is within the budget report. It has been titled quite clearly. It is a section headed EFS. It has been open to discussion in this chamber. It has been answered in questions in this chamber. So I absolutely do not recognise the proposition being made that in some way we are keeping it a secret. Thank you.
Thank you. On to question 10.7 from Councillor Bennett, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Could the Cabinet Member please advise on the progress being made in rolling out food waste collection services to residents living in flats and apartments?
Councillor Bridges, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Bennett, for your question. This administration is delivering a major expansion of food waste and recycling services across the borough, ensuring that residents in flats benefit fully from improved recycling provision and environmental protection initiatives. Significant progress has already been made across Hillingdon Council housing estates. More than 180 food waste units have been installed at over 140 blocks. Where additional building works are required to ensure safe and reliable collections, these are scheduled to begin shortly, allowing the remaining sites to come into full operation. For privately managed flat blocks, the preparation work has already been completed. Every site has been surveyed and the rollout began on the 19th of January. By the end of February, food waste collections will extend to approximately 900 blocks and around 17,000 homes, marking a substantial expansion in service coverage. Services are also being introduced for flats located above shops, with rollout beginning in early February. This work is being delivered in-house by the recycling team and includes door knocking and direct engagement to ensure residents receive clear information and support from the outset. This programme is fully funded through the New Burdens grant from DEFRA and is supported by investment in new vehicles arriving in June. Together, these measures reflect a strong commitment to delivering consistent borough-wide environmental services and an evidence-based approach to enhancing recycling performance. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bennett, have you a supplementary?
No, thank you, Mr Mayor.
Straight on then to question 1013, submitted by Councillor Gerlich. If you would please. Councillor Gerlich.
Thank you, Mayor. The Cabinet Member for Finance and Transformation has publicly admitted, via a post on the Ruislip Facebook page, that the proposed parking charges for Ruislip Lido were wrong in the 2026-27 draft budget, currently out for public consultation. Given that this draft budget was delivered late and already contains acknowledged errors, can the Cabinet Member for Finance and Transformation tell this Council what confidence residents should have in the accuracy of the remainder of the budget and what other mistakes they now expect to emerge before it is finalised?
Thank you, Councillor Gerlich. Councillor Lavery, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Gaelic, for your question. It is great to see the interest that Councillor Gaelic is taking in Ruislip matters, and I wonder if I sense a wish to be a Ruislip councillor at the next election. But we'll see. There was a single error identified in the 99-page long fees and charges schedule. It relates to one charge at Ruislip Lido, not all of them. It is not a flaw in the budget model. It will be corrected. It does not affect the overall savings or the overall budget position. Thank you.
Councillor Gerlich, do you have a supplementary question? Do you have a supplementary? Is that a no? Okay, thank you. Moving on then to question 1010, by Councillor Dott, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can the Cabinet member share an update on the new pothole technology repair machine that has been invested in by the Council and how it has been used to date?
Thank you. Councillor Tugwell, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Dott, for your question. I am pleased to update Council on the next generation pothole repair technology this Council has invested in. This machine allows our crews to fix roads faster, more effectively and with minimal disruption. Roads can often be repaired within minutes, repairs lasting longer, and we can double the number of potholes repaired each day, giving residents safer, smoother roads without wasting taxpayers' money. Importantly, this isn't just about reactive patching. It supports a preventative approach, tackling cracks and surface defects before they become costly problems. Mr Mayor, the results are clear. The Department of Transport has confirmed that Hillingdon is one of only 2 boroughs rated green for highways maintenance, putting Hillingdon at the very best in London and the very best amongst roads in the UK. That recognition shows that even in challenging financial times, this Conservative administration invests wisely, delivers real improvements and will always put residents first. Mr Mayor, Councillor Dott, our roads are safer, smoother and recognised as amongst the very best. This Council, under a Conservative administration, don't just promise results, we deliver them. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dott, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Can the Cabinet member set out how this has helped the highway and pavement improvement works delivered in Yeading Ward under the current Conservative administration and how these have improved safety and accessibility for residents?
Thank you, Councillor Tugwell, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Dott, for your follow-up. I want to acknowledge the hard work that you do, Councillor Dott, on behalf of residents in Yeading, raising local issues and pushing for improvements. Over the past 5 years, the Council has invested £2 million in highways improvements just in Yeading, including carriageway and footway resurfacing, drainage works and street lighting upgrades. In total, nearly 5 kilometres of roads and pavements have been renewed. Alongside this, over 1,200 street lights upgraded and repaired and more than 1,700 roadside gullies maintained or improved. These improvements have made a real difference to safety and accessibility and resilience, particularly for pedestrians, older residents and those with mobility needs. It's this consistent, practical focus on delivery that has placed Hillingdon Highways amongst the very best in London and the UK. This is a record of delivery in Yeading and across Hillingdon that clearly speaks for itself. Thank you.
Thank you. On to question 10.15 from Councillor Manns, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The council's borrowing has exploded from 349 million at 31st March 2024 to 518 million by 31st March 2025. The December 2025 budget report confirms that a further 267 million of borrowing is required to fund the General Fund Capital Programme on top of the anticipated 150 million of exceptional financial support borrowing simply to pay for day-to-day spending until March 2027. Taken together, this administration is driving the council towards £1 billion of debt, yet still cannot produce a legally balanced budget. The leader has been forced to go cap in hand to the Labour government for exceptional financial support, not for investment or regeneration, but purely to stop the Chief Finance Officer issuing a Section 114 bankruptcy notice. When Thurrock Council collapsed into effective bankruptcy, its debt had only just breached £1 billion. Given the strikingly similar debt levels, reliance on borrowing to fund revenue spending, and the need for emergency government support, will the Leader of the Council explain what concrete action he, as Leader of the Council, is taking to prevent a Section 114 notice?
Thank you. Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you very much, Councillor Mann, for your question and for raising the issue of debt and debt management. It's an important subject, and it's sometimes we overlook that because of our very close scrutiny of revenue budgets. However, the comparison you seek to draw between Hillingdon and Thurrock is wholly false and deeply, deeply misleading. Had this matter been raised at the Corporate Services and Finance Select Committee, officers could have advised you on the actual position, and that would have been a more appropriate forum. But let me now explain in this forum what the record is. Our present debt is not £518 million, as you stated, but £588 million. The government publishes quarterly data on debt of all local authorities, allowing for transparent and meaningful comparison. It is important to note that Hillingdon's reported debt includes both general fund and housing revenue account debt. Not all councils operate social housing, therefore a number of authorities report general fund debt only. Our general fund debt, the type of debt that presents greatest risk to councils, stands at £256 million. The remaining £332 million sits with the housing revenue account, and that has increased recently as a result of this administration investing in housing for residents. Those families now permanently rehoused rather than trapped in costly temporary accommodation are undoubtedly very grateful. This approach not only supports those vulnerable residents, but also reduces the revenue cost and pressures to the council. That is sound financial management in practice, something that the opposition consistently fails to acknowledge or understand. The new housing the new HRA housing revenue account borrowing is fully covered by the expected rental income. A financial risk would only arise in these circumstances if demand for social housing were to disappear such that we were left with social housing we couldn't let. That is hardly an imaginable circumstances. Against this backdrop, Councillor Mann, your dramatic claims, particularly the comparison with Thurrock, are not merely wrong, they are grossly irresponsible. Thurrock's debt reportedly peaked at £1.4 billion, equating to over £8,000 per resident, driven by failed and speculative investment schemes. Hillingdon's debt, including our HRA borrowing, equates to about £1,780 per resident, and we have no such schemes. To suggest these positions are strikingly similar is clearly preposterous and can only be made with the intention of alarming residents, regardless of the fact. Let me place Hillingdon's position in a proper London-wide context. Our total debt, again, general fund and housing revenue accounts, is lower than that of every neighbouring Labour authority. It is slightly lower than Hounslows. It's about 70% of Ealing's and around 60% of Brent's. A more meaningful comparator is debt as a percentage of council income. On this basis, Hillingdon has the 22nd lowest level of borrowing across all London boroughs. Whilst Hillingdon debt equates to approximately 75% of income, neighbouring Labour boroughs exceed 150%. The 5 London councils with the highest debt-to-income ratios have more than 3 times Hillingdon's level, the worst exceeding 6 times. The common factor for all of them is that they are Labour-run councils. I therefore welcome the opportunity Councillor Mann has given me to reassure residents that Hillingdon's finances are well managed. Our borrowing is prudent and purposeful, and that it is this Conservative administration that continues to demonstrate sound financial management. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Mann, have you a supplementary question?
I do, Mr. Mayor. Thank you to the leader for his response. Given that this financial crisis has unfolded entirely under the leader's watch, and that he has now replaced the Cabinet Member for Finance, does he accept that the ultimate responsibility rests with him? And why should residents have confidence in his leadership to continue?
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very, very much. I'm very pleased that the answer was completely and utterly ignored, and that we are now trying to yet again suggest that I should step down because of the continued financial pressures on local authorities. I've always accepted full responsibility. That comes with the position of being a leader. Even with a cabinet member responsible for finance, ultimately the buck stops with the leader, and I am accountable for it. This council, this administration, myself, the cabinet, are not responsible for the level of funding we receive. The case has been very, very clearly shown by the new fair funding review and the formula that we have been underfunded for many, many years. The decision we took was to soak up the pressure rather than knee-jerk reaction and slash services harming our residents. The issue was not we were overspending, the issue was we were underfunded. That is being resolved. We will move back into balance by the time of the full implementation of the fair funding review. And so I welcome the fact that residents will see that, and they will have an opportunity in May to either endorse the position we as Conservatives have taken or to consider and choose otherwise. Thank you.
Thank you. So on to Councillor Ahmed Malana, please. 10.8.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With the opening of the new Platinum Jubilee Leisure Centre imminent, could the Cabinet Member please outline any plans to promote its use and, in doing so, support local residents in leading healthy lifestyles? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bridges, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and my thanks to Councillor Ahmed Willana for his question. The management of the Platinum Jubilee Leisure Centre will fall under the Council's existing leisure contract with the private sector operator Better. This ensures that the new centre is operated to the same high specification and service standards as the borough's other leisure centres, while keeping activities affordable for all residents. The new leisure centre will provide residents with a range of modern high-quality facilities to support active and healthy lifestyles. These include a new swimming pool, a rooftop 5-a-side football pitch, a fully equipped modern gym, and additional features such as a climbing wall. The centre has been designed with families in mind, offering engaging activities that encourage younger residents to stay active and have fun. A comprehensive communications plan has been jointly developed by the Council and Better. This will include an open weekend showcasing the centre's facilities, with opportunities for residents to try activities free of charge. Promotion across the Council's digital channels, press releases and photo opportunities, regular social media updates on Council platforms, content on Better's social media and website, articles in the Hillingdon People magazine, local outdoor advertising boards in the surrounding area, and updates via the Council intranet. The communications plan will be reviewed and updated regularly to incorporate new ideas and promote upcoming activities. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bridges. Councillor Arwad-Balana, have you a supplementary question?
No, I don't, Mr Mayor. Thank
you. So we move on then to question 10.14. That's a question from Councillor Cole, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a question for Cabinet Member for Finance and Transformation. As the 25-26 budget was based on using capital transformation to achieve a target of 34 million in-year savings, can the Cabinet Member please tell this Council what percentage of the 34 million saving target was achieved by capital transformation and what was achieved by managed vacancy factor? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lavery, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Corr, for your question. We seem to be spending this evening explaining the workings of local government finance to the opposition, but I will try again. Capital transformation does not deliver in-year revenue savings. It never has and was never claimed to. It relates to the use of flexible capital receipts to cover and fund the costs of change, not to plug day-to-day spending pressures. As such, capital transformation has delivered 0% of the 34 million in-year savings target. Instead, 5.8 million capital receipts in 25-26 supports the delivery of 9.6 million of future ongoing savings and cost avoidance. The managed vacancy factor simply reflects normal staff turnover across the council and contributes some 1.1 million of the 34 million savings requirement, and I'll do the maths for the benefit of the opposition. That's 3%. Any suggestion that capital transformation was ever intended to make up the 34 million in-year savings figure is factually wrong and shows a fundamental confusion between capital funding, transformation costs and revenue savings. Finally, while some additional in-year vacancies have temporarily mitigated slow delivery in certain areas, this is managed short-term mitigation, not a structural solution, and is being treated as such. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Corr, have you a supplementary question? You don't, thank you. Straight on then to 10.5. Councillor Burrows, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Could the Cabinet Member for Community and Environment provide an update on the current status and future plans for the Borough's archives and museum?
Thank you. Councillor Bridges, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Burrows, for your question. Mr Mayor, the Borough's archives and museum successfully relocated to their new home here at the Civic Centre on the 17th of December 2025. This move forms part of the wider Civic Centre plan to bring value services together here in one accessible location, complementing the Uxbridge Library and adult learning services already based on the site. The archives and museums are open on Monday to Saturday from 9 AM to 5 PM. and on Sundays from 10 AM to 1 PM. The museum now features 3 new exhibitions showcasing highlights from the Hillingdon collection. These artefacts will be refreshed every 18 months to ensure that more of the collection is displayed on a regular basis. Residents can also access the archives and collection materials through our search room, which is available by appointment. A drop-in service is also offered for items on general display. Looking ahead, Mr Mayor, the Hillingdon Museum and Archives team is working toward re-accreditation and progressing with the digitisation of the collection. This will enable a wider online audience to explore the borough's heritage and allow more collection highlights to be shared with local residents. And in doing so, Mr Mayor, I'd also like to thank the staff for the great efforts they've gone to make this a very successful project. A full programme of the events and outreach activities is planned for 2026 in collaboration with partners across the council services. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Barrow, do you have a supplementary question?
I do, Mr Mayor. Could the Cabinet Member also clarify any developments regarding the sale of the former library site?
Councillor Bridges.
Mr Mayor, I am delighted to announce that we are under offer with a well-respected local institution for the sale and renovation of the former library site whilst protecting its use. This is now with the respective party solicitors, and we will make further announcements through the Council's official channels when it is appropriate to do so.
Thank you very much. So we come to question 10.9, Councillor Sweeting.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. In his Happy New Year message in the January edition of Hillingdon People, the leader of the council claimed that 40 million is being withheld from Hillingdon Council, implying that the Labour government is deliberately denying him funding. It has long been clear that this 3-year settlement, and it is up to this council to operate within its financial capacity. Yet Conservative decisions, chronic overspending, missed savings targets and exhausted reserves have left the council in its current precarious position. So why has the leader of the council failed to acknowledge that Hillingdon has gained substantially from the Labour government's fair funding settlement, as set out in the Cabinet report of the 23rd of December 2025, and has instead chosen to mislead residents about where the blame lies? Thank you.
Councillor Edwards.
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Sweeting, for your question. I regret that, again, because we are into the narrative that it is the council and this administration's consequences of our overspending, that I must again repeat a fair bit of what has been said in the past, including this evening. The reality is, in fact, as I have said previously, very different. The root cause of our overspending lies with government, past and present, failing to provide sufficient funding to meet statutory duties they impose on local authorities. And we are not the only local authority suffering from that pressure. By law, councils are required to deliver a wide range of services. Demand for those services has increased significantly over the past decade and more, driven by population in Hillingdon that has far outpaced both London and national averages. At the same time, demographic change has increased the level of need. Neither of those factors were considered as part of a former funding settlement. These factors are now clearly recognised in the new funding formula, and that is welcome. Compounding, though, the underfunding has been the cost of delivering council services has been driven up by the decisions taken by the Labour government, as well as by inflationary pressures arising from the international events. The widely criticised increase in employers' national insurance contributions has been a major driver of rising costs, particularly in adult and children's social care, where cost inflation is running well above the general inflation rate, the rate at which government is compensated. Despite this, government refuses to fund us adequately for that increase. Add in, the government broke its promise to fully reimburse councils for the increase in their direct employment costs created by the tax on jobs. That also created a funding gap for this council and others. A consequence of Labour's two budgets is that unemployment is rising and has risen in London to the rate of nearly 7%, a level not seen since early 2014. This increase, which is concentrated mainly among the lower paid workers, will increase demand for council services, has increased demand for council services, and will drive up the money owed by residents to the council. Once again, without adequate government funding, putting council budgets under pressure. Similarly, the sustained attack on private landlords has reduced the supply of rented accommodation as landlords exit the market. The predictable result has been a sharp increase in the cost of rent, of cost of temporary accommodation, and the councils are expected to absorb that without additional funding. Despite all of this, Hillingdon continues to deliver exceptional value for money. The opposition refuse to accept or hear that fact, that our spending per resident is the 4th lowest in London, and it is materially lower than the average Labour-run council. Interestingly, the 4 lowest spending councils per resident are all Conservative councils. Our spending per resident on adult social care and health is the 2nd lowest in London. And for children's services, we are the 7th lowest. Hardly lost control of spending. I repeat, the root cause of our overspending lies with government underfunding for statutory services. While I am critical of the government on many fronts, it does deserve credit for introducing a new funding formula that more closely reflects the increased costs for councils like Hillingdon we've faced in the past few years. However, that formula, as I have explained, recognises the need, the demand on the council that existed last year, exists now, and will exist going forwards. It is not an expression of need in 3 years' time. Yet the government have chosen to phase in the increased funding, providing only 1/3 next year, 2/3 the year after, and full implementation only in 28-29. That decision to phase in the new funding formula is entirely separate from and not determined by the welcome return to a 3-year funding settlement for local government. They could have introduced the funding formula in full within that settlement. If it chose to do so, the government could reconsider and pay this money immediately. Instead, it is decided that our underfunding should continue, and as I have explained, that presents a cost pressure to this council amounting to £65 million, £590 per resident, a decision of the government. For that reason, the councils will not be joining Labour in celebrating a partial increase in funding next year. We will continue to stand up for residents and press for the fair funding formula to be implemented in full immediately. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Councillor Sweeten, you have a supplementary. Oh, I beg your pardon.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I have to inform you that we've reached the 45-minute
no
time limit
supplementary,
allowed
I
for
beg your
questions.
pardon.
Councillor Banerjee, Councillor Punja will receive written answers, and if Councillor Sweeting has a supplementary, if you let us have that, we will arrange for a written answer to be provided to that as well. All those written answers will be included in the minutes.
Well, there you go. Okay, so straight on to motions to council then. Agenda number 11. So first motion from Councillor Tuckwell, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move this motion because what is now coming from the Labour government and the Mayor of London is not careful planning reform. It is chaos. And local communities like Hillingdon are being asked to pay the price. Labour is divided nationally and is failing to meet its own housing commitments, particularly in London. Rather than fixing that failure, it is reaching for centralised control. Stripping power from councils and overriding local voices is not leadership, it is panic. This council has always supported well-planned, locally led development. We have delivered homes, including affordable homes, in the right places. What we will not accept is a planning system designed to mask national and mayoral failure, a system that removes local democracy and silences our residents. The threat to Greenbelt and metropolitan open land is real. It is also unprecedented. These protections were never meant to be optional. Open land, once it is lost forever. Labour now appears to be willing to weaken those protections, not because it is right, but because it is convenient. We are equally concerned by the default presumption in favour of development around stations. This is not careful planning, it is a blunt instrument. It would force high-density development into areas that cannot absorb it. With reduced scrutiny, weaker consultation and less accountability. The proposals on emergency community infrastructure levy relief follow the same pattern. More development, less funding to support it. Fewer school places, more pressure on GP surgeries, congested roads, whilst developers benefit, communities pay the price. Then there are the proposals to expand the Mayor of London's call-in powers. These will allow City Hall to override local planning decisions made by democratically elected councillors, decisions that reflect the clear views of residents. Mr Mayor, this is not partnership, it is control. It would force boroughs like Hillingdon to absorb development, and all to compensate for Labour's failure to deliver housing in central London, especially in zones 1 and 2, where it should have been focused. Outer London should not be Labour's dumping ground. Taken together, these proposals represent a clear and direct assault on local democracy. They weaken environmental protections and sideline councillors. They also sideline our residents, all in pursuit of targets Labour itself cannot meet. Now, this brings me to the local Labour group. This motion presents them with a clear choice. They can stand with Hillingdon residents, they can defend local democracy and protect our green spaces, or they can side with this chaotic national government and its disastrous planning agenda that puts convenience ahead of communities. For the Hillingdon Labour Group, this is a test of political backbone and a test of who they really represent. While officers will respond to the consultation professionally, that is not enough. This council must also send a clear political message. That's why this motion asks the leader to write urgently to our 3 MPs, to demand that they oppose these proposals publicly, to raise Hillingdon's objections in Parliament, and to defend the residents they were elected to represent. This is about trust, it is about accountability, and it is about democracy. Mr Mayor, Hillingdon will not be dictated to, and I commend this motion to Council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tuckwell. To be seconded by Councillor Edwards, I believe.
Mr Mayor, yes, I do second, and I do reserve my rights to speak at the end of the debate. Thank you.
Okay. Other speakers? Councillor Batts, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I wholeheartedly support this motion because it defends the very principle of a democratically accountable planning system. Section 38(6) of the Planning and Compulsory Purchase Act requires decisions to be made with the development plan unless material considerations indicate otherwise. That principle is the guardrail that lets residents shape how growth happens, not simply whether it happens. The proposals being consulted threaten to weaken that very guardrail. National reforms include in-principle support, a default yes, explicitly including greenbelt land with minimum densities of 40 to 50 dwellings per hectare. For outer London boroughs, where stations often sit near sensitive edges, that risks normalising high-density schemes which have been deliberately protected. My colleagues, Hillingdon has more to lose than most. Official London data shows we have 4,870 hectares of designated green belt, the 3rd largest in London after Bromley and Havering, and about 14% of London's total. Once it is gone, it is gone. The wildlife corridors, the flood resilience, the breathing space that keeps our communities livable, once cherished by your parents and your grandparents, gone. So this is why the law treats that protection seriously. In Samuel Smith Old Brewery, the Supreme Court held that a green belt judgment belongs with local decision makers applying local evidence, not with a centralised presumption that stacks the deck. Then there is infrastructure. The London Emergency Package proposes to reduce seal, which increases pressure for delivery. We then risk creating growth that residents can feel, but services cannot support. Shifting decisions away from this chamber to a mayor that has hardly even visited our borough, to then develop 1,000 square metres or more on greenbelt or metropolitan open land is undemocratic and unfathomable. It is not streamlining, it is centralising. London may need homes, but colleagues, there is a balance. The answer cannot be to erode protections, weaken local democracy, and strip the infrastructure funding that makes development sustainable. The answer surely is more creative. better transport links well outside of London into commutable working areas, and empowering other cities in the UK to be more resilient. I urge colleagues to back this motion and for our MPs to oppose these proposals and defend Hillingdon's residents and green spaces.
Thank you, Councillor Batt. Councillor Curling, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I find myself in a great deal of agreement with this motion. And whilst I would agree that there are some areas of grey belt that are appropriate for development, I do fear that our precious areas of green belt will come under attack. The build, baby, build approach of the Labour government seems fixated on arbitrary targets in terms of number of units. This crazy drive to high-density blocks of flats is not the answer to the housing crisis. It's merely a way to boost profits of property developers, no doubt those that donate to political parties. What we need is a 1950s style mass council house building programme and for the housing affordability crisis to be tackled. The housing crisis will not be fixed by blocks upon blocks of flats that nobody can afford to live in. The green belt is also the lungs of London, and in boroughs like Hillingdon, green belt takes up a significant portion of land. Most of it is really good quality green belt land, and we're lucky to live in an area with such areas that are protected and for the urban sprawl to be curbed by it. Whilst there is much that I agree with, unfortunately I don't feel that I can support the motion, because it shouldn't be forgotten that this all started when the coalition government dumbed down planning law and in 2012 bragged that they had reduced planning law to a mere 50 pages of the National Planning Policy Framework. This was the start of our planning laws being watered down to the advantage of developers. When I was first elected in 2002, I sat on the Ruislip Northwood Planning Committee. Back then we had much more stringent and robust planning policies, and the developments were all the better for it. In the south of the borough, in more recent times, we have seen a change in the local plan from suburban to urban, meaning that more and more developments of increasing density rather than the building of truly affordable family houses. So whilst I fundamentally disagree with the Labour government's approach to all of this, they're only going further and faster down the same road that their Conservative predecessors. So for that reason, we will be abstaining. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Curling. We now have Councillor Sweeting.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have before us this evening a motion which hits a new low, as it seeks to deliver a false message in order to spread fear, worry and distress to our residents for its own political purposes, as it hopes to deflect scrutiny away from its own financial incompetence. It's like acting like one of the red top papers who so enjoy sowing discord by delivering slanted stories and half-truths so that the big story is lost in the mists of misinformation. Let's be clear what new planning legislation seeks to deliver, which is homes for our people, homes for families who are constantly driven from one temporary accommodation to the next, homes for our elderly pensioners who suddenly find themselves homeless, homes for families who are currently in overcrowded conditions. Thousands of our residents are on our waiting list, desperate for a warm, safe home, desperate for their children to no longer be in fear of the next move to yet another temporary let. This administration is treating these proposed changes as an enemy, when any responsible and forward-looking council should consider them as a friend, as they seek to meet urgent need in the best possible way. The proposals may even stop some of the errors which this administration has delivered in planning approvals, when the pleas and cries of local people were ignored and where development was allowed, which changed utterly the character of local areas and local centres, where with the sleight of hand under the council's local plan part 2, the areas of Useley, West Drayton and Hayes were turned for evermore from suburban to urban, so increasing density and capacity and delivering high-rise flats without the necessary infrastructure. When did this administration care about keeping character of areas when it did absolutely nothing to address high-density HMOs being delivered in certain wards, and where greenbelt areas such as the Common West Drayton were allowed to become an industrial free-for-all? This motion hits a new low, as it is spreading misinformation in order to prop up faltering ratings, rather than fighting for our residents to have a chance of a decent home. Badly done, Hillingdon. Badly done.
Thank you, Councillor Sweeting. Councillor Pridger, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The irony of this fear-mongering, misleading motion is that Hillingdon Conservatives have previous. Yes, they have. They changed the local plan to build on open and metropolitan land under exceptional circumstances. Maybe the Cabinet Member for Planning and Growth can explain what those exceptional circumstances were when multi-storey flats were built in grassy meadows in Hayes, or when Lake Farm School was built on Green Belt when a sports club site was a short distance away. Let's not stop there. Useley Recreation Ground, which was protected by a covenant. He was part of the administration that appropriated the land for the development of flats. Then the faux campaign featured in My London on the 7th of May 2025. Many of the Conservative councillors opposite stood outside Cowley Meeting Hall, misleading residents that Labour were going to build on Cowley Recreation Ground. It is this administration that only last week put the community hall up for sale to developers and then swiftly took it back down again. Mr Mayor, this motion is not a serious contribution to the planning debate. It is a political stunt designed to inflame fear, deflect responsibility and entrench failure. It dresses up blanket opposition to housing delivery as environmental concern, while offering no credible alternative to meet the needs of Hillingdon residents. He should know that Greenbelt and metropolitan open land protections remain embedded in planning law. After all, he was the Planning Committee Chair for years, an MP and now the Cabinet Member for Planning and Growth. But he is too busy turning post offices into one-bedroom co-living accommodation, sounds like a HMO to me, to genuinely consider the housing needs for our borough. The real threat to open space comes from poor planning and speculative development, not from strategic plan-led growth. The attack on community infrastructure levy reform is equally misleading. If homes are not built, no CIL is collected. This council is running to the government for £150 million exceptional funding support. That CIL is valuable income, even if relief is put in place. And once again, Mr Mayor, we have a motion that is asking the leader of the council to write to MPs. Does a leader always need a motion to do his job? This motion clearly shows that they have run out of ideas and have nothing to praise themselves about. It offers fear instead of leadership, opposition instead of answers. Labour will not support a motion that entrenches housing scarcity, misleads residents and pretends paralysis is a plan. We stand for responsible planning, environmental protection and meeting the real needs of our communities, not political scaremongering.
Any other speakers before we return to the seconder of the motion, please? Doesn't look like it. Okay, I'll come back to Councillor Edwards. You seconded?
Thank you very much, Mr Mayor. Well, it has been a bit of knockabout on what should be a matter that we join together on, which is shaping the way this borough is developed for the interests of our residents, only of our generation, but future generations. And it is amazing how quickly we can descend into criticising each other. There is no disagreement in this chamber about the scale of housing challenge facing our country or the borough. We face a genuine shortage of homes, particularly homes that people on ordinary incomes can afford. The Labour manifesto commitment to deliver 1.5 million new homes was made in response to that reality, and the election of the Labour government has made that a legitimate ambition. The Planning and Infrastructure Act has been explicitly designed by the government as the primary mechanism to meet that housing target. However, the question before us today is not whether more homes are needed, we agree they are, but whether this legislation is the right way to deliver them. The Council has long been committed to meeting its local housing need. We plan responsibly, we engage with our communities, and we already operate within the nationally prescribed guidance on how to determine our housing need. What we do not need are sweeping central powers that weaken protections for us to do our part. We also agree that the planning system must be faster and more predictable. Delays frustrate residents, developers and council alike. But it is entirely possible to reform planning regime without ripping up long-standing protections for the greenbelt and valued open spaces, and without removing local voices from decisions that shape our communities for generations. The reality is that house building in London has collapsed in recent years, and planning policy is only one factor amongst many. Construction costs, regulatory complexity, and the demand volatility all contribute. Our objections are clear. The Act weakens nature safeguards and enables the destruction of irreplaceable habitats on a pay-to-harm basis through the Nature Restoration Fund. It is anti-democratic. Communities are being sidelined in decisions that directly affect their neighbourhoods, their infrastructure and their quality of life. And it's denying them the opportunity to challenge through the courts. For these reasons, we should stand together. Failure to do so will put our borough, great swathes of our borough, at risk of being captured by the Mayor of London or central government for development, not for Hillingdon's housing need, but for the social housing need of inner London boroughs. We must protect our boroughs. We should all
Can you
vote
wind up,
for this.
Councillor Edwards?
Thank you.
And back to Councillor Tuckwell. Move the motion, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And in wrapping up this debate on this motion, I will keep it brief. But I want to thank those members who have contributed positively to this debate and spoken up for local democracy and protection of Hillingdon's communities and green spaces. But this motion also draws a very clear dividing line. For the Hillingdon Labour Group, this is a moment of choice. They can stand with residents and defend this borough, or they can side with a chaotic national government and Mayor of London whose failures are now being pushed to outer London. Abstention or opposition tonight will speak volumes. This is not about protecting Hillingdon. This is endorsing the very policies that would put our greenbelt and metropolitan open land at risk. You cannot defend this borough while celebrating deregulation and overdevelopment. These positions are fundamentally incompatible. That's why the vote on this motion matters. Tonight, residents will see who stood up to defend their communities and who did not. Mr Mayor, there is a clear choice for members in the chamber this evening. You are either with residents or you are against them. I will be calling for a recorded vote, and I urge all members to support this motion. Thank you.
So, I think we need a requisite number of members to indicate, do we not, at this station? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Over to you, Lloyd.
A recorded vote has been called for and supported by the requisite number of members, so I will be asking each member in turn if you are voting for the motion as moved by Councillor Tuckwell, seconded by Councillor Edwards, against or abstaining. Councillor Abbey is not here. Councillor Ahmad Walana.
For the motion.
Councillor Banerjee. Councillor Bassett. Councillor Bennett. Councillor Batt. Councillor Bianco. Councillor Bridges. Councillor Burles.
Against.
Councillor Burrows. Councillor Roy Chamdell. Councillor Chubadar. Councillor Curling. Councillor Davies. Councillor Dennis. Councillor Dott. Councillor Edwards. Councillor Farley. Councillor Gardner. Councillor Gaelic. Councillor Garg. Councillor Gill. Councillor Gohill. Councillor Islam. Councillor Judge is no longer here. Councillor Kaur. Councillor Lakmana. Councillor Lavery. Councillor Mand. Councillor Martin. Councillor Mathers. Councillor Douglas Mills. Councillor Richard Mills. Councillor Money's not here. Councillor Nelson. Councillor Nelson West. Councillor O'Brien. Councillor Palmer. Councillor Punja. Councillor Riley. Councillor Sansapuri. Councillor Singh. Councillor Smallwood. Councillor Sullivan. Councillor Sweeting. Councillor Tuckwell. Madam Deputy Mayor. Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, that motion is carried.
Thank you. Thank you. On to our next motion this evening, 11.2, from Councillor Mathers, who I now call to propose. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I'm pleased to move this motion on behalf of the Labour Group because at the heart of it, it is not a party political motion. It is a motion about fairness, responsibilities and the interests of Hillingdon's residents. From the census, it's clear Hillingdon's population has grown and there have been changes. In parallel, there's been demands that Hillingdon's seen in children's services, adult social care and real-term increase of costs for services around London. Yet funding has not kept pace and the last government did nothing. This is why this council should welcome the Labour government's move to a fairer funding approach, one that recognises the need that is there rather than historical accident. It is not abstract. It matters because funding formulas determine whether we can protect vulnerable children, support older residents to live independently, keep communities safe and plan services sustainably rather than launching from one year budget to the next. This motion is about recognising that fair funding brings stability and stability brings better outcomes for Hillingdon's residents. And a 3-year settlement with increased funding year on year delivered by this Labour government is delivering better outcomes for this resident, now and in the future. It should be accepted, it should be welcomed. Now, I anticipate some members opposite may say the motion is nothing more than inappropriate or party political, that we're praising the government that has no place in council business. Well, let's be clear. Council funding is council business. This chamber routinely debates government settlements, government policy, government decisions, government planning, particularly when it affects ability to deliver services. When funding settlements are positive, it is entirely appropriate to acknowledge that. When they are damaging, as they have been for many years under previous Conservative governments, it is right that councils criticise them. Accountability cuts both ways. If the administration is allowed to complain when national policies seem unfair, then it should be more than allowed to say so when funding is improved in a way that benefits residents, as this funding does. And it's exactly what the motion does. The motion also notes something else cannot simply be wished away, that the Conservative administration in Hillingdon faces serious financial difficulty this year and in future years and previous years. It is not subjective, it is a fact. And in proposing this motion, I want to address this point carefully, that words matter. Some members may object to the language used or suggest acknowledging this reality is somehow inflammatory. We've not said bankrupt, mismanagement or under debt, but this motion deliberately uses formal technical terms, exceptional financial support, because that is the correct definition and description of what has happened. The reality is, without government intervention, the council will not be able to set a balanced budget in the year ahead. Additionally, this motion does not pretend that fair funding is a reward for historic failure of the administration, but it makes things clear, stating that fair funding is necessary for residents. The people who suffer when funding systems are broken are not councillors around this chamber, they are families waiting for assessments, older people needing care, and communities relying on local services. Residents deserve honesty about our finances, not spin and not silence. This council must remember that it is this Labour government that has stepped forward positively to provide stability. Labour will not punish residents. Labour will not allow services to collapse. Labour will ensure statutory responsibilities are met, and that matters. Because this motion is not about score pointing, it is about contrasting two different approaches. One approach leaves the council exposed, reliant on risky assumption and short-term fixes. The other allows the council to recognise that it cannot deliver vital services without the government's sustainable funding, and it's exactly what the government is delivering. But also, This motion calls on this administration to use this funding responsibly and transparently and to work constructively across the table. It is not criticism, it is an invitation to move away from blame towards openness, to move away from short-term crisis management towards long-term sustainability. It's about delivering a safer, cleaner and fairer Hillingdon with residents at its heart. And this is exactly what this council should be doing, and I move this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Mathers. I think we've got Councillor Podger seconding.
I second and reserve my right to speak at the end, please.
Thank you. And other speakers? Councillor Core, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion does two vital things. First, it rightly thanks the Labour government for restoring fair and adequate funding to local government, funding that councils like Hillingdon were starved of for far too long. And as the leader said, credit where credit is due, this Labour government has recognised that local authorities are not an optional extra. They are the front line of public service delivery and they deserve proper support. But second, and just as importantly, this motion makes clear what must now follow: responsibility. Under consecutive Conservative governments, councils were underfunded, overstretched and forced into crisis management. But Mr. Mayor, these austerity measures seemingly didn't matter in Hillingdon because there were reserves to fall back on until they weren't there anymore. Political decision after political decision, overspends, poor governance and a full decade of accounting errors. Together, they withered away £100 million from our reserves. £100 million gone. This settlement from the Labour government gives Hillingdon the resources it needs to meet its statutory duties, stabilise services and plan for the future. It removes the excuse that has too often been used to explain poor outcomes, delayed action and declining standards. And let's be clear, residents know this. They are not interested in blame shifting or political theatre. They want results. They want safe communities, clean streets, reliable services and a council focused on delivery, not deflection. This motion makes a fair and necessary demand that the Conservative-led administration now uses this funding responsibly, not to plug holes created by irresponsible financial mismanagement, but to deliver real outcomes for the people who live here. With this level of funding, choices matter more than ever. Priorities matter, competence matters. The Labour government has done its part. It has restored stability and provided means for action. Now let's be honest with residents. If services fail now, it will not be because of Labour funding, it will be because of Conservative choices. The Council should welcome the opportunity this settlement provides, support this motion wholeheartedly, and commit to ensuring that this restored funding delivers tangible, meaningful improvements on the ground for every resident in Hillingdon. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Core. I think we've got Councillor Curling next, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion, this is just a motion to promote the chaotic government by the opportunistic leadership of the Labour group. It's all smoke and mirrors. I believe the figure in the settlement includes the assumption that council tax will be raised by the maximum 4.99% and includes the hike in business rates, particularly the airport business rates. It is expected that Heathrow will appeal the business rates hike and at best delay the increase. So the figures of the settlement in this motion isn't quite what it first seems. I would also remind Council that before the general election, Keir Starmer said that under a Labour government, people would not pay a penny more in council tax. Now he is insisting that councils put it up by the maximum 4.99%. Another promise made, another promise broken. Indeed, some councils, such as Hammersmith and Fulham, were told by the government that their council tax was too low, and because of that, their settlement was below what was expected. Mr. Mayor, needless to say, we will be voting against this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Curling. We've got now Councillor Manns, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am, for one, strongly supporting the motion and extremely grateful to the Labour government for its fair funding settlement of an extra £126.7 million. Under the last Conservative government, core spending power fell by 7% in real terms. Budgets became exercises in survival, not strategy. Decisions were driven by what could be cut quickest, not what delivered the best outcomes for residents. Long-term planning was abandoned, transformation postponed, and reserves here in Hillingdon were rapidly depleted from 100 million to 1.5 million by the end of this financial year. And let's be honest, this is not just about national policy. Since I became a councillor in 2022, I have watched this administration budget around 87 million cuts to reserves, preside over a 76 million DSG deficit, and discover £14.1 million of accounting errors dating back to 2014, leaving this council in a critical financial position due solely to unsound political decision and financial mismanagement. That was the reality under Conservative funding. It was a Conservative administration here in Hillingdon that made poor political choices, pursued wasteful spending policies, voted for austerity time and again, and quite literally cut off its nose to spite its face. Delusioned decision-making based on inaccurate, unsafe, and flawed data is how we ended up in this financial mess at Hillingdon Council. This motion recognises that change has now arrived. The £126.7 million increase delivered by the Labour government, and crucially, a 3-year funding settlement, provides something councils have been denied for years: stability and breathing space, the ability to move from short-term survival to long-term transformation. The Conservative approach was crisis budgets, emergency cuts, and chronic uncertainty. Labour's approach is stability, predictability, and sustainability, because councils cannot deliver quality services while being kept permanently on the brink of collapse. Without the settlement, the council would be asking the Labour government not for 150 million of exceptional financial support, but double that. If I were you, I would be very grateful and wholeheartedly support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mann. Councillor Lavery, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Of course, the administration welcomes the principle of fair government funding, and it recognises that Hillingdon has been underfunded for years. And despite Councillor Mather's attempt in his speech to present this as a cross-party initiative, it is clear from the speeches that he can't control on his benches that his team don't agree with him. The accurate 3-year funding settlement is 105 million, as stated by the Chief Financial Officer in the budget report. Labour have conveniently found a 4-year figure, but 28.7 million pounds of that, 28.7 million, it's not from the government, it's from assumed increases in council tax over the next 3 years. So let's be clear, this is not a gift from government. Much of this is coming from our residents. It is a 3-year settlement, and I do welcome 3-year settlements because they give us certainty. But I'll put it to you this way. It is a bit like your employer saying to you, yeah, I've been underpaying you for some years, but by the way, I now recognise you're worth more, but by the way, you can have it over the next 3 years. Would you like that?
Councillor
No,
Lavery,
certainly
could you through the Mayor, please? Thank you.
We have the 3-year settlement leaves us with a £65 million funding gap over 3 years. £65 million.
Councillor Lavery, forgive me. Remember, you're addressing the Mayor, if you would. Thank you.
Incurring 150 million, of the 150 million, 65 million is from the gap in funding. The business rates risk is not an illusion, it is absolutely real. The increase that Heathrow has been imposed and is assumed within the settlement is massive. They will appeal it, there is no doubt about that, and this will fall apart. And much of the rest of the government's business rate reforms are already unravelling around us. The high streets are already up in arms, the pubs are all closing, and have banned sensibly most local MPs from them. Now, I know, Mr Mayor, we're all aware of the pressure Councillor Mayes is under from his deputy to follow blindly National Labour policy and London Labour policy. They just do not get it. We will provide services to residents, we will provide them sustainably, but we need the funding now. We will oppose this motion. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lavery. Councillor Sweeting, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I speak in support of the motion which thanks the Labour government for a funding settlement of some 126 million, which for the first time in 14 long years, when a Conservative government was in charge, and when austerity and cuts and more cuts was the only game in town, will deliver real terms growth for Hillingdon. The Cabinet on the 23rd of December called the settlement substantial, and so it is. After many years when the Conservative government failed to support Hillingdon's Conservative administration, we have a Labour government stepping in to save the day. It will enable this council to take its first tentative steps out of the financial quicksand, which has overpowered it and has sent cabinet members chasing scapegoats to explain the financial mess it is in. The leader of the council, in his welcome to the New Year address in the Tory propaganda mag Hillingdon People, did not welcome the 126 million. Well, how could he? It was not his own party delivering the good news. If it had been a Tory government, there would probably have been planned street parties and bunting. No, surprise, surprise, his was not a thank you. It was just like Oliver Twist with begging bowl out. Please, Sir Keir, I want some more, and I want it now. All forgotten was the 3-year settlement. Let's back the problem back to Labour, as it can't be our fault that we are in such a catastrophic financial mess. And even with that substantial settlement, so welcomed on the 23rd of December by all Cabinet members, it still requires an even larger begging bowl in the shape of 150 million borrowing needed, just to keep Hillingdon Council lights on. So a very big bowl needed, Councillor Ian, Oliver Twist Edwards. So as the borrowing needed to keep all 4 wheels on your wagon is dependent on agreed...
Councillor Sweeting, remember the setting we're in, please, if you would, but do carry on. Thank you. Please continue. Carry on.
Can I continue?
Yes, please do.
So as the borrowing needed to keep all 4 wheels on your wagon is dependent on agreed exceptional financial support from the Labour government, I suggest a little humility rather than forced bravado is needed. Well done, Labour. All right-minded people would have offered you a thanks, but it would seem that for some, thank you seems to be the hardest words.
Thank you. So before we come to Councillor Plunger as the seconder of the motion, I beg your pardon. Councillor Edwards, over to you.
No offence is taken, but I'm sure that our residents must be amazed at what goes on in this chamber and the fact that a sum of £126.7 million can be repeatedly asserted by the Labour government, by the Labour Party, as the outcome of the Fair Funding Review. As fact, they have been corrected many times. This false story was started by the local MP, and he was corrected. The accuracy was pointed out to him. He's been corrected by the former Labour leader of their own group. This is not £126.7 million of government funding given to Hillingdon. They should be, as Councillor Kaur pleads, be honest. Be honest. Say what it is. Tell us how much the government are giving us. Don't tell us how much the government is shunting across to our residents by forcing us, to increase council tax by 4.99%. Not only this year, but next year and the year after, just to receive the funding that we need, the government has determined we need, to provide the statutory services that we are required to provide. That is absurd. It is cost shunting of the most extreme. And for Labour to be proud of that fact when they allegedly stand up for hard-pressed families, for working people, is ridiculous. Let us celebrate, or will they be celebrating in 3 years' time when council tax has to go up by 4.99%, because we have to get that money to provide the funding. Inflation is running, if the Labour government is successful, at 2%. Are they going to be happy and say, well done Labour for imposing that real cost increase on residents? Absolutely not. Let's be clear, let's be honest, it is the Conservatives that will fight for the residents, not Labour. They will fight for their party. They aren't interested in what happens to local people. We are, we will fight, we will continue to argue for fair funding, and it certainly isn't yet delivered, and it's nowhere near £126 million. Thank you.
Okay, so now are there any speakers before Councillor Plunger? No, I'll call you Councillor Plunger as the second of the motion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, I, for one, certainly have the great honour and pleasure of supporting this motion. Labour's funding settlement provides Hillingdon with the opportunity to deliver long-term outcomes-focused improvements that residents have been denied for years by this Conservative administration and its Conservative government's predecessors' austerity measures. I find it surprising that the Leader of the Council will not be supporting this motion, as he once confided in the then Labour leader, Councillor Peter Curling, that he couldn't wait for a Labour government to sort out local government funding because his own party weren't listening. And earlier this evening, he said they deserved credit. Well, here we have it, Mr. Mayor. The Labour government has come to the rescue in the way the Leader of the Council could only dream about. Not just a one-year settlement, but a 3-year settlement. Instead, he chooses to cry into his handkerchief that they all don't receive it all at the beginning. Clearly, he was desperate to save himself from having to plead for a further £150 million of EFS from the Labour government just to keep the lights on. The Conservatives have claimed a monopoly on economic competence, but the truth is there is nothing economically competent about cutting councils to the bone and then blaming our vulnerable when services falter and costs spiral. For over a decade, local government was shaped by Conservative choices that prioritised austerity over fairness and short-term savings over long-term responsibility. The result were real-term cuts. We feel them, we see them, we are on the budgets every single week. Permanent crisis management and councils forced into survival mode instead of being allowed to serve their communities properly. Mr. Mayor, we finally have a Labour government that values local government and the services it provides for our people. This settlement shows that Labour understands both the economics and the consequences of underfunding, and it shows that there is a clear alternative to the failed austerity that left councils weakened and residents underserved. Every pound restored through this settlement is a pound that can improve daily lives for residents, strengthening children's services, supporting vulnerable adults, investing in community safety and improving public health. This government recognised that Hillingdon deserved fairer funding and acted to deliver it. That decision was taken in the interests of residents, not political convenience, not ideology like austerity, but fairness. The Leader of the Council and the members opposite should be nothing but grateful. Instead, they are waiting, like greyhounds in the slip, to vote against this motion, as it would cause each member severe mental distress, to acknowledge that Labour has come to the rescue when their own government did not. I will say thank you and hope that they have the decency to do so too.
Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, a point of order, Mr. Mayor. I was referenced in that speech, and I have no recollection of any such conversation between myself and the Leader of the Council.
Can I've been right. Okay,
Do you
so
know,
learn
Mr.
of
Mayor,
it, please.
that's
Come on, Lloyd.
point of personal explanation as opposed to a point of order. And you've made your point of personal explanation, which will obviously be recorded.
I'd like to make a very similar point, that I have no recollection of such a conversation.
Thank you. No,
Excuse
whoa, whoa,
me,
whoa, whoa.
Mr. Mayor, I will not be called a liar by anybody in this chamber.
I will conduct. I will conduct this meeting. Thank you very much. Thank you. Right. We will now return to the move of the motion, Councillor Mathers. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, let's be honest. The leader called for honesty. Heathrow is a red herring. It will be covered and mitigated by the government over the next 3 years. Yes, we cannot afford and do not want to see a huge appeal on business rates, and Heathrow is one of our largest employers. But let's not use that as an excuse not to accept something that is going to benefit our Hillingdon Borough and our Hillingdon residents. Let's be honest, it is the Conservative administration's policies that have continued to hike up increases in fees and charges year after year after year. Let's be honest, EFS borrowing will cut services year on year on year. And let's be honest, it's the cuts of this administration that have sustained the managed decline of this borough, one that we do not want to see happen any further. And this funding will make the difference. The leader said earlier, it should be easier for us to come together. He was talking about the planacy policy. I cannot see how it's not easy for us to come together and welcome government funding that improves and helps the lives of our residents. He spoke about people criticising one another rather than thinking about the positives that things can be brought. And here we have an example where his benches and he have not listened to his own advice. This funding will help residents. This funding is sizable amounts, real-term amounts, increasing every year over a 3-year settlement, which was not plausible under the last government because they did not wish to do it. And come this May, having seen the cuts of a former government, Conservative government, having seen the cuts of this administration, when the Conservative government could not deliver, they were removed. And this May, residents have a chance to remove the local Conservative group who also have cut and not delivered. This funding will help Hillingdon's future, Mr. Mayor, and this funding should be greatly welcomed.
Thank you. So at this point we come to the vote on the motion that's before us, and I would ask those in favour of the motion to please now show. Okay. And those against, please. The motion is lost. Thank you. So we move on now to a motion 11.1. I'm calling Councillor Gardner, please, to propose. Thank you.
Can you hear me?
I don't know if it's my hearing this evening. I'm struggling a little bit, so okay. Raise your voice as best you can, please.
I move this motion. Basically, it's on behalf of the worried residents in the Hayes Town area, the local police ward panel, and myself as, us as HIP councillors. I don't mean HIP in a trendy way. If the CCTV room is staffed with a minimum of, say, 3 or 4 officers per shift, there's a better chance of the service being 24/7, which I think a majority of council CCTV rooms are. There will also be a great chance of proactively identifying fly tippers and those involved in both crime and antisocial behaviour. From my substantial ME and SR submissions and my many calls to the CCTV room following complaints and queries that I've had from residents whose houses have been burgled or shops that there's problems in, and I hear the background noise. If that is the staff that are solo working, they're incredibly busy with live crimes because I've heard radios going off, and I'm acutely aware that my many calls may actually be stopping the staff members working while I'm on the phone to them. Surely it's basic common sense for everybody here that if we have enough staff to cover the CCTV room for 24/7, we'll be able to identify the culprits fly tipping, increase prosecutions, which will gain us revenue, and as well as keeping residents happy by proving we're actually proactive rather than reactive and prove that we as councillors take fly tipping and antisocial behaviour seriously. I've been in ward meetings where police have informed the attendees that they've only called to find there's no one there to answer their calls in the CCTV room. I've also called the CCTV room myself and had no response. You must agree that it really does not send out a very good message to residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gardner. And we have a seconder in Councillor Curling, I believe.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I second this motion and acknowledge that we are accepting the amendment as a friendly amendment. This is a common sense motion. The huge investment in the borough's CCTV camera network needs to be used and monitored effectively and efficiently so that our residents can live in a safe and secure borough. In Hayes Town Ward, we have numerous issues that could easily be dealt with the aid of a more proactive CCTV service. Things like the inconsiderate and illegal loading and unloading of lorries, as well as many other traffic violations. The antisocial behaviour such as abusive drunks and beggars that could be reported directly to the police. Shoplifters could be identified quicker and video evidence passed to the police. The menace of constant fly tipping could be tackled more effectively. I'm sure that these issues are replicated in every ward, and I'm sure that every councillor has at some point asked the CCTV control room for assistance with ward issues. Janet and I work closely with the Hayes Town police team, and they have had some excellent results working with the CCTV control room. But they could do so much more if the CCTV service was more accessible to them and more proactive with regards to the monitoring and alerting aspects of the service. I would, however, like to put on record our thanks and appreciation to the dedicated staff in the CCTV control room, as they do an incredible job considering there are so few of them. Unfortunately, they don't seem to have the resources to make the most of the investment that the council has made in the CCTV camera network. We therefore welcome the opportunity for the Resident Services Select Committee to review the CCTV service, which I hope will hear from the team themselves as to how things can be improved and how the service can be made more proactive and integrated with other partners such as the emergency services. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. We're moved and seconded, and we're coming on now to Councillor Sensapuri, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This amended motion is about public safety, community
Mr. Mayor, just to interrupt, there is no amended motion at the moment. We're debating the main motion.
Mr. Mayor, this motion is about public safety, community confidence, and whether this Conservative administration is backing up its rhetoric with resources. We are told repeatedly by this Conservative administration that Hillingdon is a safe borough and that community safety is a priority and that we are modern, digitally enabled council. Yet the reality in CCTV control room tells a different story. Yes, we have around 3,000 cameras. Yes, the system itself is very impressive. Yes, the staff who work there do an excellent job when they are there. Mr. Mayor, camera do not prevent crime on their own. Camera do not answer the phone. And camera do not liaise with the police. But people do. This administration allowed a situation where a vast CCTV network is monitored by a very small number of staff. This Conservative administration like to boast about the low council tax and sound financial management, which we also heard in today's leader's speech. But what is the point of having thousands of cameras if there is no sufficient resources to monitor them? This is a penny pinching in a wrong place, and it undermines very purpose of the system. Mr. Mayor, community safety is not a luxury add-on. It is a core responsibility of any council. If administration can find money for pet project and publicity, then it can find funding to properly staff a service that directly impacts the security and safety of residents. This motion simply asks the Cabinet act urgently to review the level of funding in order to match resources with the reality of proper functioning of this service. Supporting this motion is supporting safer street, safer neighborhood, and the council that actually deliver on its promises. I urge members to support this motion. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. I now call Councillor Bridges.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to move the amendment as shown on the order paper, and I welcome the opportunity to set out the reasons for doing so. The London Borough of Hillingdon has made major investments in its CCTV infrastructure in recent years, with around £3.8 million spent on upgrading equipment and strengthening technical and operational capabilities. The council now operates an extensive network of roughly 3,000 cameras across the borough, including those supporting social housing and the security of council-owned sites. These cameras are proactively monitored to support a clear strategy focused on deterring and preventing antisocial behaviour and crime. This includes real-time coordination with the police during incidents, alongside the provision of evidential material to support investigations and prosecutions. The CCTV network operates continuously 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, with uninterrupted recording from all our cameras. Staffing is arranged to ensure live monitoring at the most important times, including busy periods and major events. The control room currently operates with one operative during daytime shifts and 2 staff overnight, reflecting the higher demands at night and the need to prepare evidential packages while maintaining live monitoring. The CCTV control room plays a vital role in supporting police investigations and wider council inquiries, including environmental crime and insurance-related matters. Staff also work closely with Uxbridge Town Centre ambassadors, assisting with responses to shoplifting and identifying individuals subject to criminal behaviour orders. Evidential packages are prepared through retrospective review of recorded images. In 2025, the control room live monitored 7,928 incidents and produced 791 evidential packages. Each month, staff proactively identify 20 to 30 additional incidents, including safeguarding concerns such as rough sleeping and public safety risks like dangerous vehicle breakdowns. Control room staff liaise with police on average of 20 to 25 times a day daily. They also identified 133 previously unreported fly tipping incidents during the year. The CCTV control room is not designed to be directly contactable by the public. Staff rely on police radio to respond quickly to incidents, and direct public calls would compromise their ability to monitor effectively. Public inquiries should instead be sent to the council's published email address, and elected members are asked to follow the proper protocol when contacting the service. And it's for those reasons, Mr. Mayor, that I move the amendment before us this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Bridges. Is that seconded? Is the amendment... Councillor Edwards.
My apologies. Mr. Mayor, yes, I rise in second and reserve my rights. Thank you.
We're moved and seconded. We're debating the amendment. Just to be clear, any speakers on the amendment? Councillor Mathers, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to be clear, the Labour Group will not be accepting this amendment as friendly. Whilst the Hayes Independent Group do blindly follow their Conservative masters, we cannot allow this motion to be diluted. As is often regularly done, using select committees or other instruments by this administration is used to push things into the long grass and to take away urgency of anything that has to be done. These processes can take a year or more, or in HMO cases, forever and ever. We cannot support an amendment that removes the honest, reflected experiences of councillors, police and residents due to understaffing. Urgent action must be taken. 3,000 screens for 1 or 2 people to watch is far too much, and it does put our residents at risk. The original motion makes Hillingdon residents feel safe and will be safer, and therefore we say this original motion should be left untouched.
Thank you. So, any other speakers on the amendment? Councillor Corr.
Mr. Mayor, I really wish I could find the generosity of Councillor Curling in accepting this as a friendly amendment, but I've also heard Councillor Gardner's repeated writings to the committee and the way her frustrations were with the CCTV room and the way it wasn't properly sourced. So there is a clear gap between what this administration says about the CCTV and what is actually being delivered on the ground. The council states the CCTV exists to make Hillingdon a safer place to live, work and visit. That is a strong ambition, but ambition without proper staffing and resourcing is meaningless. My comments are based on direct experience. As a member of Resident Services Select Committee, I visited the control room. What I saw was not a failing workforce, but a frontline service weakened by financial and staffing cuts. Skilled operators are expected to monitor hundreds of cameras, respond to police requests, manage radios, and track live incidents, sometimes working alone. This is neither safe nor resilient. I also draw on extensive ward casework and regular conversations with residents, particularly around antisocial behavior and fly tipping. Residents ask a very reasonable question. If CCTV is meant to keep us safe, why does antisocial behavior continue unchecked? From casework, the answer is clear. Cameras are not always working, not actively monitored, or not positioned where problems actually occur, including known fly tipping hotspots. National guidance backs this up. The Surveillance Camera Code of Practice states that CCTV must capture images of evidential value. A system that cannot do this consistently due to capacity constraints is not effective, no matter how many cameras are installed. This is an administrative failure. Investment has gone into infrastructure, while the frontline service needed to make it work has been hollowed out. The result is missed incidents, lost evidence, frustrated residents, and little deterrence for offenders. That is false economy. Properly staffed CCTV can deter antisocial behavior, support prosecutions, enable fines, and reinvest income into services. I really wish this motion hadn't been watered down. Thank you.
Any other speakers on the amendment before I come to Councillor Edwards? Apparently not. No? Okay. Councillor Edwards, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I do very much regret that Labour cannot see the wisdom in referring this to the Select Committee. I can absolutely understand their concern, though, about this being seen to kick it in the long grass. But we can arrive at a timescale to deliver a proper review that should satisfy that. However, as is typical of a Labour administration elsewhere, and what would be typical if they were here, is that they simply prejudge what is the best. And their prejudgment always results in hiring more people. Absolutely. More people, more bills, more budget, more overspending. That would be their solution. 3,000 cameras, 3,000 screens is what we've heard, potentially. How many people does it take to monitor that? Isn't it time that we actually stood back and thought about how best to do that? To look at the use of AI and modern technologies that might better do that lifting, rather than employing human beings to sit and watch screens hour in, hour out. That's just not reasonable. It's not the appropriate solution. And I am absolutely surprised that Labour have so very quickly discounted that as the way forward. No, it is the right way to do that. We are pleased that the initial motion raised the attention of the CCTV room. There is a lot going on within a council that is, as we have discussed many times and mentioned that many times this evening, under a lot of financial pressures, not of its own making. And sometimes we do lose sight of some important issues. And so we're grateful for the motion being raised. But the amendment is the right one. It means that we can undertake a proper review. We can look at other opportunities rather than just simply saying, no, let's get more people in there. Let's add to the burden of cost. Let's add to the pressure on our residents. Let's increase their cost even higher, just because we can't be bothered to do the job properly. Very, very disappointed with Labour's response to that. They should be supporting us. They should be looking at a better way of delivering the outcome that everybody wants. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And it's now to Councillor Gardner as a mover of the substantive motion, please, if you would. The original motion, I beg your pardon.
Sorry. I'm a bit disappointed, actually, because I thought the amendment was not as much as I wanted, but what I did, because we saw the amendment earlier in the week, I went to 2 or 3 community groups, read it out to them. These are people that have actually asked for thorough staffing the CCTV room. And they said, what's the Resident Services Select Committee like? And I said, as I'd been a member on it for many years, I actually thought it's incredibly thorough. The councillors on it do their work properly, and I knew that they would call in the staff from the CCTV room or whoever's in charge to explain the situation, so that they would then be able to make, I don't know, the decision, and which would then go back to Cabinet to show what the CCTV team do, how many cameras they look at, and things like that. So I'm sorry, I'm annoyed in a way that the whole motion didn't go through, but I actually do agree with the amendment, because I've mentioned it to the people that have concerns about the problems. And that's all I can say, really. I mean, what else?
Thank you. So we now come to Councillor Bridges as the mover of the amendment.
Mr. Mayor, I have no further comments to make other than what I've said earlier, and indeed lead with the council, so I've moved the amendment.
Very well. We come to the vote on the amendment. Those in favour, please. Could we please show? Thank you. And those against?
Mr. Mayor, that amendment is carried. That now becomes a substantive motion to which further amendments may be moved, or if there are none, we just need to vote on that.
So, any further amendments? No? Let's vote on the substantive motion. Those in favour, please. Okay, that looks unanimous. Okay. Those against, just for the record? I think it's everyone, isn't it? Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. So that's carried. Thank you. So we move on to our final motion of the evening, 11.4, and I'm going to call Councillor Edwards, if you would please.
Excuse me. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I move the motion as published at 11.4 on the order paper. The government's decision to stop sharing information with local authorities, operational data on asylum seekers, may sound technical, but it has serious and tangible consequences for this council and for the communities we serve. Councils are on the front line of public service delivery. We are responsible for housing, safeguarding, public health, education, community safety and cohesion. We cannot discharge those responsibilities effectively if we are deliberately kept in the dark. Doing so places both the welfare of asylum seekers and the well-being of our residents at risk. By pausing the sharing of data on asylum seeker placements, the government has made it harder for councils to plan, harder to safeguard vulnerable people, and harder to reassure local communities. This is not good leadership, it's poor administration. Our request is modest and reasonable. We are asking for the restoration of routine sharing of aggregate operational data. How many people are being placed in our areas? Where? What pressures are increasing? And what councils should expect in the weeks and months ahead? The consequences of failing to do this are entirely predictable. Without timely data, councils cannot plan. We cannot properly prepare homelessness services or community safety teams. We cannot ensure safeguarding arrangements are in place for vulnerable adults or unaccompanied children. In effect, we are being asked to manage complex social impacts blindfolded. The government says it wants efficiency, yet there is nothing efficient about springing hotel placements or evictions on local services without warning. There is nothing efficient about forcing councils into reactive crisis management rather than proactive planning. And there is nothing efficient about the undermining the very institutions best placed to make the system work on the ground. Most damaging of all, this decision erodes trust. Trust between central and local government, trust between councils and residents, and trust between communities and the asylum system itself. Local residents have legitimate concerns about the use of hotels for asylum accommodation without notice or consultation. Community cohesion has already been damaged by repeated failures to engage meaningfully with communities about asylum accommodation sites. These concerns are reinforced by the findings of the Home Affairs Select Committee, which very recently concluded that it has seen no evidence that the Home Office has a credible plan to make the distribution of asylum accommodation more equitable, nor has it seen a fully articulated plan with clear milestones for delivering a significant reduction in the use of hotels. Crucially, achieving those two outcomes is not a contractual requirement for the asylum accommodation providers. There's no penalties for failing to secure wider distribution. Providers are paid fixed rates for dispersal accommodation, meaning the cheaper the accommodation they procure, often in already disadvantaged areas, the greater the profit they make. It is therefore becoming increasingly clear that the government is not in full control. Confidence in its commitment to fairer distribution and to the ending of the use of hotels will fall further. Worse still, by withholding information, councils are left unable to answer basic questions from residents. This creates a vacuum that far-right activists will exploit. They will foster tension, they will foster misinformation and anti-immigrant sentiment. Rumours will spread unchecked, trust will deteriorate, community tension will rise. This won't be accidental, it will be the direct and foreseeable result of failing to share information that should be routine. It is telling that opposition to this decision has come not from one political perspective, but from across local government, charities that work with refugees, and from parliamentary committees. This is not an ideological disagreement. It is an operational reality asserting itself. All of this comes at a time when councils are already under unprecedented financial pressures. Demand for homelessness services, social care, temporary accommodation is rising, whilst funding continues to lag. Against this backdrop, withdrawing access to data is not a neutral act. It shifts risk and cost onto local authorities without consent or compensation. If the government genuinely believes in fairness and shared responsibility, it should be working with councils, not around them. If it believes in value for money, it should be enabling early planning, not forcing crisis response. I therefore urge all members to support this motion and call on the restoration of that information. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. And we're seconded, I think, by Councillor Tuckwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am pleased to second this motion this evening because what we are really debating tonight is not data but responsibility. Hillingdon knows what it means to carry the consequences of national asylum policy. We see it in our housing teams, our schools, our social care services, and the pressure on communities that are already stretched. Yet at the very moment those pressures are increasing, the Home Office has decided the answer is less transparency, not more. Let's be clear. When central government places people in our borough, it does not place them on a spreadsheet. It places them in real communities using real services paid for by Hillingdon taxpayers. Cutting off access to information doesn't reduce pressure, it simply shifts the cost, the risk and the blame onto local government. Governing by secrecy is not strength, but it is weakness dressed up as control. And this approach doesn't just fail residents, it fails those seeking asylum too. When councils are kept in the dark, problems are not prevented, they are postponed, until they surface sometimes as homelessness, rough sleeping or crisis intervention. This is bad policy making and weak management. The Home Affairs Select Committee has already warned where this leads. Less data means worse planning, higher cost and greater community tension. That is not compassion, that is chaos. Mr. Mayor, this is a modest and reasonable motion. It asks government to stop sidelining councils, start treating local government as a partner and take responsibility for the consequences of its own actions. You cannot run a system in secret and then ask Hillingdon residents to trust the outcome. So tonight, the Hillingdon Labour Group has a further chance to either stand with residents or stand on the sidelines. I support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tuckwell. We're moved and seconded, and I've got Councillor Doss indicating. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm speaking in support of this motion because it highlights a very serious issue affecting Hillingdon and other councils across the country for the government's recent decision to limit local authorities access to information about asylum seeker placements. Councils like Hillingdon need accurate, timely data to plan for schools, healthcare, social care, and housing. Without that, we are forced to react rather than plan, placing unnecessary pressure on our services, our staff, and ultimately our communities. There is no information on new arrivals, no clarity on transfers on move-ons, and no way to anticipate demand. This is not just inconvenient, it is frustrating, costly, and leaves councils scrambling to respond instead of preparing effectively. The consequences are clear. Services are stretched without warning, safeguarding risks are missed, communities are left confused, councils are blamed for decisions they did not make. Hillingdon taxpayers are then left footing the bill for millions of pounds in unfunded pressure without any transparency from the Home Office and how or where the public money is being spent. Councils have been left in dark and residents are left confused and frustrated. It is no wonder that other council leaders express their frustration publicly. The leader of Speltham Council, for example, has publicly expressed the same concerns, asking for clarity from Minister of State from Border Security and Asylum. Hillingdon shared that frustration. Mr. Mayor, this approach does nothing to improve the asylum system. Instead, it is increasing pressure on local services, risk tension in our communities, and leaves taxpayers wondering why they are paying for a system that is neither transparent nor accountable. Our residents deserve clarity, our services deserve proper support, and Hillingdon will continue to stand up for both.
Thank you. I'm calling Councillor Punger now, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This motion is another example of the leader playing the blame game instead of showing leadership. Yes, data matters, but so does keeping data safe. The Home Office decision followed a serious data breach, and the first duty of any public body is to protect sensitive information, particularly where vulnerable people are involved. We also see a motion that is dangerously close to scapegoating. It treats asylum seekers not as human beings fleeing persecution, but as a demand pressure to be complained about, and is doing so risks fueling the very community tensions it claims to be concerned about. I understand that the leader of the council promised all three MPs figures on 19th of September 2025, a breakdown of costs incurred by the council in supporting asylum seekers. These figures of millions that were bandied out in statement after statement by the leader and Hillingdon Conservatives have never emerged. So either the leader has no idea of the true costs, or there is a reason why he's not revealing them. For this motion, there is one key question. Do councils actually need this data to do their job? Much of what is being demanded goes beyond what is necessary for service delivery and raises serious safeguarding and security concerns. More still, when they had the data, they did nothing for community cohesion. In fact, the leader called me a racist when I asked for council comms to be reworded so it didn't include racially prejudiced terms. And if the leader genuinely has concerns, he did not need a motion at full council. He can raise this in the appropriate London-wide forums or write directly to the Home Office without instruction from this chamber. Maybe he can advise this council on which of these he has already done and attended. This motion achieves nothing except another press release and another attempt to pass the buck. Mr. Mayor, once again, instead of taking responsibility for local pressures, the Conservatives reach for someone else to blame. Labour will not support a motion that ignores the reality of the data breach, overstates the council's operational need, and substitutes posturing for practical leadership.
Any other speakers before we return to Councillor Edwards? No other speakers? Okay. Councillor Edwards, please, if you would.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and I must admit I'm not particularly surprised by the response from Councillor Punger. But it is rather shocking, though, that when this is recognised by so many different organisations, by so many different councils of all different political persuasions, and the consequences are not only ones that I have set out, but also ones that have been very clearly shared by the Home Affairs Select Committee, that we have the Labour Party saying, don't care, not bothered, This is just us playing political games again. When Rome does burn, we will remind them of this fact. When tensions rise, we will remind them of the fact that we are not able to comment. That is the way things are. We can't answer if we're not given the information, and it seems that Labour would be very happy to be blind should they ever be trusted, which I pray to God they aren't, with running this council.
Thank you. We now put the motion to the vote. So those in favour, can I ask you to show, please? Thank you. And those against? The motion is carried. And with that, that brings our proceedings to a close this evening. Thank you very much.